I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to the conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. Thank you for being with us wherever you are. We're streaming this program live in our partnership with the Black Press of America. We're streaming it from the National Newspaper Publishers Association YouTube platform. It's called Black Press USA, and we stream it from our own YouTube platform, YouTube.com/Insight News MN. What we want you to do is help us grow this. We've got around 500 subscribers now. We're looking to get our numbers up to 1,000. Our goal is to monetize this, and we need each person that and you to support us by subscribing, sharing, and liking, and asking people to be a part of this conversation. We do this 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and our premium show is our Tuesday show, which is also broadcast live on KFAI FM 90.3 in Minneapolis. Bottom line is that we're creating robust conversations. Our objective is to simply engage as we do, as journalists, with thought leaders, with business leaders, with community people, with young and old, with religious and spiritual movers and shakers in our community, to document our thoughts, our visions, our points of view, our successes, and our failures, and to use the variety of platforms that we have, the digital, the website, the radio, the community access television, and obviously our flagship Insight News, to create a record. That's what we do. We're storytellers, we're record keepers, we are scribes. So we want to be that with you and for you. We invite you to support us and to join, to also send ideas or to be on the program yourself. And we'll put information up saying how you can connect. As you listen to today's program, if you got a comment or a question, put it in the comment section. We'll try to monitor that. We'd love to have you respond to the issues and to the presentations today. And if you want to be on, we might be able to get you into today's program as well. Well, Wednesdays, our focus is on entrepreneurship and economic development, wealth creation. And I'm pleased to have the principal behind an innovative project business called New Rules, Chris Webley. Chris has created New Rules. New Rules is a North Minneapolis-based real estate development collective that's built on the idea of developing ecosystems and solutions for Black and Brown communities where economic, health, and wellness and education disparities have resided and, in effect, breed. And so the New Rules organizations takes unproductive buildings and overlooked communities, and co-creates innovative spaces that are designed by the community to solve the problems that the community has identified for themselves, both personally and professionally. So New Rules creates more than physical space, however. It's kind of the nexus between the arts, culture, community, and technology. They have a community innovation hub for public, private, community, and philanthropic engagement. New Rules is a destination location for fresh ideas, for organic networking, and curated events grounded in the shared experiences of Northside's communities. So Chris Webley, president and CEO, studied textile technology with concentration in medical textiles at North Carolina State University. He's worked with Calvin Klein, with Victoria's Secret, and with Target, accumulating over 7 years experience in the retail fashion industry as the R&D textile engineer. He started his entrepreneurial career as a real estate developer with New Rules in 2013. And to date, New Rules has closed over $11 million in real estate transactions. And that shows it's a result of experiences in community engagement, acquisitions, development management of commercial and residential buildings throughout the South and the Midwest. Information about them, newrulesmn.com. Chris, good to see you, my friend, and thank you for taking time to be my guest on the conversation with Al McFarlane. How you doing?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
Well, so good to see you here and good to have you here. Let's jump right in and talk about New Rules. Let's do New Rules 101. What is it?
So new rules, we are a real estate collective based on the North Side, like you said. We take, I would say, much different from most institutional developers. New rules, the name is intentional. We wanted to model behaviors that did not exist, not only on the North Side, but I would say holistically in the real estate development space. Behaviors of innovation. We can't change that real estate is inherently an extractive means of, I call it modern day sharecropping. I can't change that that's how the system has been set up, but we can change the behaviors as a result of what happens once we bring buildings online. A big part of our success has been rooted in really taking community feedback, listening to the community, and then providing spaces that align themselves to what the community is asking for. Again, much different from most institutional developers. We find creative and innovative ways to bring the cost down for our developments. We pass those savings along to the community, so all of our spaces are affordable, accessible to the folks who are in our neighborhoods. To date, since 2015, we've opened our flagship location on Lowry, which is New Rules. Today, it functions as a shared workspace by day, so we have creatives and entrepreneurs who are officing out of it, similar to a co-working space, and then at night it turns into more of an event space. So we rent it out for a variety of community events, from wedding receptions to repasses to birthday celebrations to baby showers, you name it, we've done it. And then back in 2017, we started down the path of food and beverage. Food and beverage was one of the main things the community asked us to solve for back in 2015 when we got started. Again, a big part of our model has been rooted in community feedback. So it wasn't just this initial check-in of like, what does the North Side need? When we had that check-in, food was the biggest concern that folks wanted us to address. Access to economic opportunities, and then access to space in a variety of different forms. And so the last 7 years, we spent building that ecosystem, what we call the Northside ecosystem, that covers three main points: live, work, and play. So we have an apartment complex called Bell Lofts that houses 25 families currently under construction. New Rules, like I mentioned, our flagship location operates as a shared workspace and event space. 2017, we added the restaurant and liquor license. And just recently, we finished Tap In, which is our newest location, which is coming online later this year. Again, what we learned from food and beverage down the street at our other location is that the two cannot share space with events and shared workspace. And so we bought an old dilapidated Speedway Super America site down the street from our current location.
Down on Lowry and what? Lowry and
Upton, right across from two.
Okay, yeah.
So we just finished and just got our second liquor license at that location. We're really excited to be bringing it online later on this year.
So talk about food and beverage. Let's, because for forever, people have talked about not having even a Starbucks in North Minneapolis. We've had a couple of coffee shops, a couple of restaurants that have come and gone, but that's been a challenge forever. And I'm interested in more of what you learned as you were doing the listening, and what people said were the challenges, the problems, the why, that these projects were not sustainable, and what could be done to move towards sustainability. And I know that you're saying that there are a lot of connecting parts. There's no one single thing, but go into that if you would.
Yeah. So a lot of our sort of anecdotal feedback has just come simply from experience. Trial by fire is what I call it. So the community was like, hey, we need access to food, healthy food. It's a food desert. Food took form in a multitude of forms, whether it be a grocery store or a restaurant, sit-down establishment. We didn't really engage the community around like what are the issues of why it is working. We're more practitioners of trying to do it ourselves and then figuring out, I call it failing forward. And so in 2017, when we got into the food space, we opened New Rules Cafe and Spirits and learned an immense amount of through that experience.
That's at your building that you're in right now, right?
No, we're at Tap In right now. New Rules is our first location that we
Okay.
opened. So it's on Lowry, just in between Morgan and Newton, right across from the
Okay.
fire. And so, as somebody who lives in the neighborhood, I live on Lowry. I want to stay in the neighborhood. I want to keep my dollars in the neighborhood. I think when we started down this path, we were working with Neon, and they mentioned how food on the north side is a $21 million market,
Mm-hmm.
and that the majority of it is leaving the north side.
Mm-hmm.
And so in 2017, when we opened the cafe, again, learned an immense amount from that experience, and what are the issues around food, why food does work on the north side, why it doesn't work, what are some of the challenges. I would say the biggest thing for us was finding the delicate balance between providing quality food. I mentioned I live in a neighborhood. I like to eat clean. I want my people to eat clean, and to do that, it just requires a certain level of economics. I can't change what food costs from Cisco or US Foods. I can't change the labor price. I want my folks who work at our establishments to make a living wage. I want them to be able to pay bills. I want them to be able to save for their future and retirement and things of that nature. And so, those are things that I call our standard pieces to the puzzle that we can't change. Is if I change it, we're changing the product, and the food is a lesser quality, or people are getting paid less, and neither one of those were options for us. And so we learned quite a bit just in terms of, one, where the priorities were in terms of the community. Where did our neighbors want to spend their money? The food was
talk about that. What did you discover? Because I've been in business in North Minneapolis for 50 years.
Yeah.
And my experience is that it's difficult for us to get our people to spend with each other.
Yeah.
So what's your experience?
It hasn't been terribly hard for us to get Northsiders to spend at New Rules. I mean, I think it was last year, 78% of our events, we both were from Northsiders.
Okay.
And so that happens quite regularly, frequently, without having to bat an eye. Now, when it comes to prioritizing health, it's a little bit of a trickier situation, right? We had a lot of kids who live around the building, who are our neighbors, who were apart, come hang out at New Rules daily. And, for them, it's like, it's not $1 or $2, because there's this level of equating to what can I go down to the corner store and get for $1 or $2. And if I can get a juice down at the corner store for $1, I should be able to get a fresh juice from your establishment for $1.
Okay. Okay.
And so it's been quite frankly some education around, how do we come up to the number? We're not out here trying to price gouge. $7 for a juice is kind of like the bare bottom of what we have to charge to keep the lights on. So we've done a considerable amount of educating folks, and then helping them understand where we're sourcing products, of what's adding to the inflated cost. It's been received quite well. We haven't got a ton of pushback from the community. They've been quite supportive economically in terms of what we're working on. I think part of that is, again, it's just sheer to, on Lowry, since the pandemic. The pandemic decimated a lot of the food businesses, the few food businesses that were up on Lowry. So the fact that there aren't a lot of options makes it a little bit more amenable for the community.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what's your prospect for vitality? What do you think is going to be the formula for growing and having the impact on the bottom line?
The formula is just continue to do what we've been doing, listening to the community and delivering what they asked for. As I mentioned, there wasn't just a one-time deal for us. We check in quarterly with the community in terms of where are we at, what are some of the learnings that we've had this past quarter, and then here are some of the proposed pivots. And I'll give you some of those examples. Back when we started our shared workspace, community was like, I'm a college student. I don't really have $150 to pay for a membership. And we got a lot of that from college students and Northsiders alike, and really went back to the drawing board to see how could we adapt our model and propose some new changes. So where we're at right now is we have a sliding scale membership, so it's based off of income. So for somebody who's making a college student or anybody who's making less than 35 grand a year, memberships are $20 a month, which is more or less just our way of making sure people have skin in the game. Generally when there's some economic exchange, there's a different type of value that people associate to spaces.
And the membership means they can come to the facility and hang out, work,
Yep, hang out. Use our memberships are really focused on startups and entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
So the traditional, while they're called memberships, they operate much differently from most co-working spaces, and that most people who are members at our space host reoccurring events. So they're the yoga instructor, they are the person who does food pop-ups. And so our memberships are really structured around people who who are working on a startup, need to flesh out the idea, and then get it to scale. New Rules isn't the location to get it to scale, but our development pipeline has been built around kind of this grow with me model. So New Rules down the street is really built around that 0 to 3 years entrepreneur. They're just tinkering. They're trying to figure out where their lane is. And they test it, iterate it at New Rules. After 2-3 years, they're generally ready to move into a co-shared, co-lease space, which is Tap In. Tap In is that next step for the entrepreneur business owner who's, we say 3 to 5 years experience, really not ready to be on their own lease and renting, but are ready to co-lease a space with other folks. And so Tap In is that next step. And then we have another development in the pipeline that will house 5 commercial retail suites. And those retail suites are really geared to the folks who are matriculated past that 5-year mark and are ready to be good renters. I'm a real big practitioner of start small and then work your way up. From there, so this next location would be really for folks who are ready to lease their own space in hopes that they will spend 2 or 3 years there and then move to their own space where they're able to either own. It's kind of the goal for us. We want to move folks to a period of ownership.
Chris, what would you say are the density challenges and opportunities for North Minneapolis? Population density. I mean, this is there's nobody up here. I mean, there is, but there is space for a lot more people. How do we? Is that something we should articulate? Is there a school of thought that says let's keep it like that, so we don't have the urban pressure, or is there a school of thought that says we can do more and be more if there are more of us? What do you see as a population challenge again, an opportunity, and the trend? Where are we going?
I mean, I definitely think that Northside has infinite potential. Is there a need for more density? Absolutely. Affordable housing will continue to be an issue. Me, quite frankly, I want to keep as many Black and brown bodies on the North Side as possible, which is why we are in the housing space. Quite frankly, it just depends on what part of the North Side you're on. Once you cross over the Lowry and come into Councilman Vital's ward, things start to get a lot more political with the neighbors as it relates to density and the fears that come with density. Even for us to get our liquor license, every neighbor around this building generally was concerned, and it's just like, Tootie's is right across the street with a liquor license. Respectfully, what's the difference? We can.
And what did you find? That's a real deal, because when other people do it, it's not a big deal. It's part of the way things are. But then Yardy shows up, Chris shows up, and they question why you want to do this, or can you do it? Let me tell you a story. when Jimmy Fuller, you might not know who he is or was. You know that name by any chance? Okay, so back in the day, probably before you were born, man, we had a restaurant called the Riverview Supper Club on North Minneapolis.
I heard of that.
Before it became the Riverview, it was the Cozy Bar on Plymouth Avenue at around 6th. It's where the freeway is now. Freeway took out Mickey's Liquor that was there, moved Mickey's to where it is now. But Cozy, Mickey's, and another liquor store were all down there, 4th and 5th on Plymouth Avenue. So Jimmy Fuller wanted to buy that spot where the Riverview Club ended up being, and ran into resistance from city council members. And one of them told me when I was asking, why is there a problem putting this supper club? The drawings are great and da-da-da-da-da. And Jimmy's got a track record. He's a businessman, successful. And he says, well, we got that bridge coming over Broadway from north and northeast. And if he's building a club, north of that, there in that cul-de-sac, people would have a hard time coming over the bridge and making a right turn. What? And so that's like how many jelly beans are in this jar. Totally stupid. But they will say anything to distract or to justify their real intent, and that is a question whether you should be in this space. Why are you trying to get this money? So that's what you're saying is a new iteration. That feeling is still around in some ways. I don't know. What do you think?
Oh no, it's definitely still around. And I was even telling my design team, we're coming down to our last few projects in Minneapolis for that simple reason. It's like shit, I got to go through all of this to get a liquor license in my own neighborhood. Where city council and everybody in between the lines says there needs to be economic development, says there needs to be beautiful spaces like the space behind me. I think the intent is there. I think what people are where we haven't been able to find transparency is. Can you guys be quiet? Can you guys? Hey, I'm on a call. Actually, can you step out? Sorry.
No problem.
I don't know why people are walking in. But yeah, so we're at a point now where we are, the effort that it has taken to do projects in my neighborhood, places where I want to see these projects, places where people who look like me want to see these projects. There's a lot of bureaucratic red tape, and just to be honest with you, is not worth. There's no economic gains on the other side of these projects. I do these projects on the north side because I love the north side. I don't make my money on the north side. I flip a gang of properties in other neighborhoods, other states, and we take those capital gains and we bring them back to the north side to create assets like you see. So where do I'm not sure where the tide is turning. I know that we are getting a lot more focused to only develop in neighborhoods where we have city council support. Councilman Vita has been tremendously supportive of everything that we touch, every idea that comes across our mind. And so we're keeping our focus to those areas in alignment with folks who share the same values. I think that the difference with sort of where we're at and holistically is where values are at behavior. It's not enough to say that we share the same values anymore for us. I need to see those behaviors in action. I need to see a track record of those actions that
you need to see the money. It's the money. It's the money.
It's not even the money, man. The money isn't what stops our projects. I mean, we get a third of our projects. I mean, every project on the north side, from a real estate perspective, starts out 50% underwater, meaning that if this building cost us $1 million to build, it appraised for $507,000. That means that there's a $493,000 gap on the back end. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm very conservative. I don't like risky deals. So if they're telling me it's only worth $500,000 when it's done, I only want to really be into it for like $300,000-400,000, because that's kind of where there's a lot of pieces that people haven't considered when it comes to real estate on the north side. the fact that nonprofits don't pay real estate taxes and that ACEs get spread out to everybody else, the fact that the average household income is less than 30,000, depending on what side of Lowry you're on. Like, there's a lot of different variables, and so we're playing a long-term game. You know, we should set up our deals. I'm going to give these buildings to my kids one day. I don't even have kids, so that lets you know how far off we are.
Sure.
And so yeah, that's just, you know, when you have to start with a project 50% underwater, you have to get really creative from the jump, which is, you know, bringing in some city money, some county money, some state money, philanthropic funds, and we've mastered it, I would say. It's really the zoning stuff, you know, like here we had to fight. We had to get a variance and pay several $1,000s to put a shipping container on the lot when our neighbors have similar metal structures. You know, it's like, well, because the 2040 comp plan changed, and that's technically now your front yard. I'm just like, there's just so many red tape things where it's just like, we should be arguing about a lot more other things, not where a shipping container is going to go on my site. You know, not if we're going to have parking. The city got rid of parking. I understand neighbors are concerned about it, but I didn't make the rules, so you know, following those rules. So there's a lot of different. It's a layered conversation. But
did you build from the ground up or renovate it?
We renovated,
okay.
Which again, probably in hindsight, I know in hindsight, we're moving to a new construction only development portfolio. So this is our last building that we will renovate, and then moving forward will be new construction from the ground up.
So I asked you about density, and you talked about how the things are connected. And one of your projects was the Bell Lofts. Tell us about the Bell Lofts, because that's been in a little controversy. And I wanted to make sure that you had a chance to lay out both the story, the narrative that is genuine from your point of view.
Yeah. So Bell Lofts, we purchased back in 2021 during the height of the pandemic. You know, $2.5 million building, 25 apartments. People would have said we were crazy to purchase it at the start of that pandemic. Bell Lofts came as inception because of our design thinking practices. Back in 2017, 2018, we started to see some trends in members leaving the rules at a very rapid pace. And we incorporated some exit interviews to understand why people are leaving. And it wasn't because new rules or the shared workspace wasn't meeting their needs. It was simply because they had left the neighborhood. What we know from shared workspaces are people generally live within a few mile radius of where their workspace is. And so when we asked, you know, well, why are you leaving the neighborhood? Because of, it was like, because we can't find adequate housing. We can't find landlords who care. I can't find landlords who have maintenance who will respond to my maintenance requests. And when you looked at how some of the people were living, it was quite questionable at best. And so in 2020, 2020, I forget what year, but when Bell Lofts came on the market, I was like, it can't be that one building that I went to, that one crazy party when I first moved to Minneapolis. It can't be that building. And sure enough, when I got the offering memorandum, it was. Bell Lofts, for those who don't know, is a historic building on 21st and Bryant that was originally Northwestern Bell. Not a lot of people know that, but it was the home of Bell Communications, and all of the telecommunications was powered for the North Side in that building. George Shorman converted it to a 25-unit apartment building in 1900s, or early 2000s, sorry. And then we purchased it back in December last year. So we ran the building. We had it for 18 months. I'll be honest, when we bought the building, we inherited a lot of which I already knew, just from my limited experience in real estate. You know, I walked all 25 units before we bought it. I met all the families. And so I saw a lot of the challenges within the building from a maintenance perspective, from a housekeeping perspective, from just the surroundings. You know, Murr and Liquors and the Murder Station is just one block east of the building. So a lot of those environmental things that plagued the building came from some of those external factors.
You said Murder Station?
the murder station. That's what every other North Sider I know that calls that gas station right across from Irvin's.
Okay, all right.
So many people have lost their lives there. And yes, we bought it, inherited a heap of issues, but did not stop what the mission ahead. We renovated. We had about 7 or 8 vacancies that we had when we acquired the building. We renovated those units and we're actively getting them rented. I think we had all but one rented or had families scheduled to move in prior to the pipe bursting. Back in December last year, we had a code snap those last couple of weeks in December. Unfortunately, had a pipe freeze and burst on the 3rd floor that then flooded the entire building. That displaced the 21 families that were living there, totaling about 50 people, which I'm going to be honest with you, it shook up my world and it hasn't been the same since, in a good way. It's unfortunate that it happened to the families, but we assembled a task force the very next day. The day it happened, we got families moved into temporary housing, hotels, and paid that out of pocket. The beauty, I guess the beauty and the curse in real estate is that, attorneys draft contracts in a way that mitigates liability for all parties. And for a lot of the renters, unfortunately, while they agreed to have or carry renters insurance, did not have renters insurance. And so, I knew right off the bat. I talked to my agent the day it happened. They were like, Chris, we're not paying for hotels for anybody, not even if it's required by the city. The city requires by state statute that we would provide housing for the first night. That's not how I roll. I live in a neighborhood. If my mom was in this building, it's kind of how I've always operated any housing spaces. If it's not good enough for my mom, it's not good enough for any tenant. And so when the pipe burst, I was like, it's unfortunate. We are going to pay for these families to have housing. I know that I'm just a little small fry. My money will run out. So we were very proactive and reached out to the Phillips Family Foundation, the Minneapolis Foundation, who both directed us to Pillsbury United because they handled the Drake fires and helping tenants find new housing. And so we pretty much assembled a task force with those parties, the Red Cross, Urban Homewards, PPL, Aon, Sherman and Associates. And for the next 2 months, we worked around the clock to, one, get families into the building to retrieve their belongings. The building did get condemned as a result of the high levels of moistures and concern of mold and things of that nature that might come as a result of high moisture. So our main priorities that first initial few months were getting families into the building to get their belongings. We worked with the Jane Rose Phillips Family Foundation and the Minneapolis Foundation, who provided, again, my money was short. I was only to pay for a week of housing out of my pocket, which was about $10,000, $11,000. After that, I was like, these families are still going to need housing. So we partnered with the Phillips Foundation and the Minneapolis Foundation. The Minneapolis Foundation provided, I think, a $50,000 emergency grant to immediately extend families. The Jane Rose Phillips Foundation helped hire movers and paid for storage for tenants for the first 2 months. My church home, Sanctuary Covenant, provided volunteers to help tenants move out. Once we got through that period, it was really about helping folks find housing. I'm happy to report as of today, all the families have found new permanent housing. We knew that the transition from temporary housing to permanent housing comes with a financial bill, paying first and last month's rent again for new move-in, moving expenses, et cetera, personal belongings that were lost as a result of the water damage. We raised a little over $111,000, which went directly to the families and got distributed via It Takes a Village and Pillsbury United Communities, who we're tremendously thankful for being that liaison with the families throughout that transition. So yeah, we've kind of sort of shifted gears now that all the families have been housed, to really start to focus on the road forward to rebuilding, and restoring the building back to a safe space for families to move back in. So we've been working with the insurance company this last year, who just quite frankly doesn't want to do what's right to make sure that the building comes back on with the best bill of health. But I assure you, our legal team is working around the clock to make sure that we get the values associated to do the work. But essentially, we're going to remodel Bell Lofts. We gutted it back to studs. All the floors up, all the cabinets got thrown away, all the appliances trashed. So while the insurance claim is going to cover a good amount of it, there's above and beyond things that we plan to do. Some of those photos you guys have with the future of what Bell Lofts will look like when it comes back online. But
let's
really,
show that. You got something to show, Cooper, and want you to sort of walk through. Walk us through these.
Yeah, so this is actually one of the units. This is 105. This is what the existing is, not what the structure looks like existing, but it is a rendering of what it would look like when construction is complete. They are lofted units, meaning that they're 2 floors. So we're going to open up the space. Again, the intent when we purchased Bell Lofts was to merge families, the existing families in the building, with entrepreneurs, business owners, and creators. Really want to recreate this idea of the same neighborhood that probably you and I both grew up in, where it's kind of like this, it takes the village. You know, you had the lawyer standing across the hallway from the single mom who's right across the street. You know, so we're trying to, what we wanted to do is recreate that dynamic, to really start to shift some of the economic trajectory. I'm a firm believer that when we create these spaces, we provide new outlooks of life for folks. You know, for me, somebody who got into development in 2012, it literally took a Black man walking down the street who was younger than me, who I was like, "Where are you headed?" He's like, "I'm headed to one of my properties." And it literally took a Black man, like the representation of a Black man, that told me, "Oh, I can own property too. I can build buildings too." And so I know how much that representation means for somebody who, like myself, is college educated. I mean, I didn't even think I could do it with those. So it's like my neighbors, if we're able to give them, you know, hey, Chris lives across the hall from me and he's able to own a building. That's
yeah,
exactly. So yeah, that's our intent when we bring the building back online. It was the intent when we purchased the building. We will maintain that vision through
25 units. You said 25 units.
25 units. We're also adding 10,000 square feet of workspace. All of our spaces, I label them as incubator spaces. You know, while Tap In might be a restaurant on the books, it's still an incubator space for us. We define incubator spaces of where we want like-minded people who share our values in action as a landing home for those folks. And, you know, for the creatives on my team, for the people in the neighborhood, you know, Bell Lofts, we want to be that anchor location for them to live, work, and play out of the same location. So the basement space was being converted into a kind of a maker space, workspace, with a shoot off of a event space, meeting room for the tenants in the building.
Okay,
we're really excited about that, to be adding that new amenity to the space that wasn't originally there.
In a sense, it kind of creates an opportunity for entrepreneurship to grow spontaneously, organically, and it eliminates barriers of lack of access or lack of exposure to ideas and idea makers. It opens that up. That's wonderful, man. So who were your major critics? What did you come up against in this? If you want to talk about that, you know, and how have you resolved things, and where do we stand right now with your work and your vision for Bell Lofts? You've described what you're bringing online. That's powerful and it's beautiful. But again, what's been the environment?
It's been quite an environment, I'll be honest with you. I would say initially when the pipe burst, you know, the first week, it was everybody was like, "Oh, what can we do to chip in? Like, we're going to drop what we're doing and help. And then somehow that narrative shifted. News media, quite frankly, was reaching out, asking for statements, et cetera. And my priority was not talking to media. My priority was giving the families the help that they needed. The time away talking to media was just time away from the families. Through that period, it was quite critical. But then also to advise to us by our legal team to not talk to media. It was they were very strong about that point. I would say that the issue is that character wise, I'm not a type of person who allows somebody to question my character and they go unquestioned. And that's what happened a lot with the media as we chose to not respond. It allowed them to create their own narratives. And I'll be honest, there were a couple of tenants who they were able to target as, and there was only 2 or 3 tenants who were the consistent folks throughout the interviews that they used. Not their stories were accurate for the most part and valid. Did they share all of what was happening? I think, and what I've learned just from this experience is that they were likely sharing it because there was a period where we would not talk to media, but we would send them tenants to, we can't talk to you, but the tenants can tell you what their experience were. And, several of the articles, the tenants even called us back and was like, I can't believe they did you like that. They left out everything that I said that was positive, or that, Chris was doing the best he could, or that he inherited a lot of these issues. And so that was probably the biggest contingency, or the biggest piece that stuck out. And I think there was probably 40 plus articles that were written in a span of 4 to 6 months that quite honestly were just very hurtful. I have never. It was interesting to see us go from the hood hero to the hood slumlord overnight by, quite frankly, white folks who don't live in this neighborhood, who don't know me from 2 buckets in a pail, were able to go scream from the mountaintops. And because it went unquestioned, it somehow added to the validity of it.
Just so you know, the experience is not without precedence.
I'm sure.
And really, it's part of a practice and a pattern. To denigrate, devalue, deflate, destroy, and invalidate Black leadership, Black genius, Black integrity, and Black capability to be resilient, self-reliant, and to prosper, to be a source of prosperity with a sense of agency. And what I'm thinking about as you're describing it, one of the stories I did back in the, might have been the 80s or the 90s, there was a project over in South Minneapolis on Elliott Avenue, some apartment buildings. And, for years and years and years in the apartment world, there was a character that nobody could find who was the absentee landlord, the slumlord, right? But ubiquitous, but invisible. Who is he or who is she? Where, nobody could, they had just webs of not being able to find them. The media couldn't find them, so they said. And almost like the courts couldn't find them, and the inspectors couldn't find them, right? So this Black guy comes in control of these 20 or 30 units on Elliott Avenue and inherits classic, renter and poor neighborhood renter problems. And all of a sudden, we get for the first time to look at a slumlord happens to be a Black man. And that's what they were doing to you, right? But that's what they do all the time.
It's quite funny. I was telling my team, my team told me, they was like, Chris, do you think the guy you bought this, who lives in Calabasas, do you think if he still owned this property when the pipe burst, do you think 40 plus articles would have been written about him? I said, I guarantee you they wouldn't even call that man or even had a way to get in contact with them. And I guarantee you his reaction wouldn't have been the reaction of ours, and that we're going to find temporary housing. We're going to find resources to get them placed to new permanent housing. again, now do I expect that of that same person? It's neither here nor there. I know what I expect of ourselves, and
Mhm.
that's what we did.
But
So it
the
was,
question is, what should you expect of the information environment
yeah,
and the agenda that drives that environment? And that is an agenda
mhm,
where it's almost not personal against you. It's the way they do the deal.
yeah,
And
yeah,
you happen to be lucky enough to be at a situation where the crosshairs land on you, right?
yeah,
And you represent their pattern and practice of destroying uh, development and opportunity and futures for Black entrepreneurship and Black wealth building. That's
right.
what I said. That's my analysis and my observation as
Uh,
a communicator here for 50 years now.
yeah, and the reality is that real estate development, and especially in affordable housing, and I fear for a lot of my Black and brown brothers and sisters who, after the uprising, since all the institutional capital left, the only buyers left in line were Black and brown folks, which is why
Mhm.
there's been this floodgate opening of Black developer this, BIPOC developer that, ownership this. And it's just like the reality is like these projects don't make money. Like when Bell Lost, if it was a leased up, everybody paid their rent on time, it makes $20,000 a year. We can argue that $20,000 is simply a contingency budget or a budget for a pipe bursting or something
It's,
like that, a major
it's not
repair.
even that. It's you can't do business that way and call it business.
Exactly. And don't get me wrong, like I knew that going into it. We built the
Yeah,
performer. I knew it was going to generate the 20,000. And I said, I still want to do it. And
yeah.
we said we still want to do it because if not us, then who? Like if
Well, I
we
think
don't,
your
if,
answer was that you have in mind, though you don't have children yet, something that you're creating a
mhm,
legacy for, and
mhm,
you are focused on your children's children.
yeah,
What will happen generations down the road, and creating a space and opportunity for them, I think. Am I
yeah.
wrong?
I would say third or fourth priority. I would say first priority is leading by example. Going back to the
Mm,
name, new rules. There is a way to get these smaller buildings to work, and we're figuring it out.
mm,
We they take a lot of creativity, a lot of ingenuity, and I'm really interested in our new rules. Has really been focused these last couple of years on building best practices for running buildings in Black and brown neighborhoods because nobody's teaching us how to make sure that we can preserve these assets to give them to our kids. I would argue that the way its system is kind of inherently set up is that some of us are going to be giving these buildings back to folks in 5, 10 years time because there's just a lot of things that come with owning a building. And luckily for us, we've kind of gone slow at a slow process. Our first building was $150,000 building. Then we got a $250,000 building. Then we got a $500,000 building. Then we got a $2 million building. And so it's been incremental with our growth. So I'm really interested in documenting those best practices. Like how do you run a 25 unit building that has tight cash flow issues and still manage and still make more than the $20,000 that's shown in the spreadsheet?
mhm.
And we've figured out, we've cracked that code. And I'm really excited to bring the building back online so that we can validate some of those earlier learnings that we had and share them out with the community because that's really the legacy building that I'm interested in. It's like, will new rules be okay? Yes, I believe we will be okay for the rest of our existence. But I don't do this work for me. I could go back to working at Target and take my 6-figure salary back and just mind my business. I do this because I want to create a pipeline for the Black and brown bodies coming behind us to have a playbook, the playbook that I didn't have, the playbook that we should have to shorten the learning curve. If another Black person has to go through what I went through at Bell Lofts in terms of how do you handle a pipe bursting? How do you handle a building get condemned?
Mhm.
How do you handle the media? If we don't have those playbooks and if we're not sharing those learnings to the generation coming behind us, then what are we here for? And I'm not a hoarder of knowledge. I'm not a hoarder of resources, and I'm very transparent. So I'm really really excited for what the future holds.
Let's take a break and we'll come back and wrap up. I want to ask you about the future for New Rules and for you. And I want to take a minute just sort of reflecting on, I refer to you as a Yardie, your and my common roots in Jamaica, and what that energy means for the drive that you exhibit. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. Be right back with Chris Webley in just a second. Are you or someone you know recovering financially from the COVID-19 pandemic, the lockdown, or any other reason? If so, help is available. Findhelp.org is a site to find a wide range of resources, including food, medical care, and more. The best part is based on your zip code. Visit findhelp.org, enter your zip code and the service you need. You'll get a map directing you to the organizations that can help you. Help is waiting at findhelp.org. If you need help starting anew, findhelp.org is the site for you. I'm Al McFarlane. Again, thank you for being here. I want you to support this program, this conversation, by going to YouTube, Insight News MN, and becoming a subscriber. We want to grow our subscription base. We're just crossed 500. We want to get to 1,000. Our goal is to monetize this, and we believe that we're presenting genuinely, authentic and useful information, and we want you to help us validate that by bringing your voice to the conversation as well. I'm happy to have Chris Webley talking about his innovative work at New Rules in North Minneapolis. Chris, thank you for being here, man. Take a minute to talk about the future. You referred to it, but let's specifically focus on the plan, the future for New Rules.
Yeah, no, the future for New Rules. I'll be remiss if I didn't start with this idea of I tell business owners and startups that we work with all the time, create the life you want to live and then build the business around it. And I think, generally speaking, most entrepreneurs, business owners start with the business first, and whatever left they have for personal is how that shakes out. My lived experience has been the more I focus on my self-development, what Chris needs to have his cup full each day, allows me to pour into others. I am, 36, and I am ready to settle down and get married, have some kids, 5, 6, 7 of them, as many as my wife will let me have. And I've been dating this woman for some time, and I'm pretty sure she's gonna be the one that I get out the game with.
All right.
And so I say that to say that, the future for New Rules, we're going to continue to grow. How we grow is going to be more strategic, more focused. So as I honor this reality that I'm going to have less time in the future, I get married, have kids, there's just less time that I have to devote to showing up and running this company. The past 2 or 3 years, I've been cultivating successors. Successors are kids on my team who have modeled the behaviors on their own in their own companies, and really looking forward to enable the next generation to carry the torch. So we've been working with a few kids in our collective who I think are ready to do this work and can take it much further than where I brought it to. Within the next, I would say 2-5 years, our focus is mainly renovate Bell Lofts, which will come back online, I hope, by next fall. That's a main focus of ours. And Houston White is one of my mentors and really good friends. And he has been schooling me just on how to think about business, especially on the north side, because there are a lot of different variables to consider. A big part of that strategy, I'm calling it the Houston White strategy, which is doubling down. He was like, Chris, stop taking culture to different parts of the city or the north side in totality. He was like, why not just continue to add culture where you're creating culture? And by that meaning, you have land that's vacant on buildings that you already own. He said, why not just develop that land And so our next few projects are really to use the land at buildings that we already have and to add more buildings to it that complement what's already happening in the space. So you'll start to see a lot more new construction at some of our existing sites, which we're really excited about. The other piece that, 3 to 5 year plan that I'm really interested in, as I mentioned earlier, we're switching over to primarily just new construction. I'm really interested in this ownership model. We've created a pipeline for people to get to ownership, and now we have to provide opportunities when they're ready for ownership to buy. And so a lot of the vacant lots that still are on the north side, we're really interested in developing those lots with this new 4D program that passed, which allows you to add 4 units to any lot in Minneapolis. And so interested in new construction, single family, duplexes, quadplexes that we can resell to community folks who are matriculated and are ready for ownership. But outside of that, it's just bringing Tap In online later on this year. Really wanted to get that off to a good start. So yeah, that's main focuses for the next couple years. Focus, do well. I tell my team, we've built the bike. Now it's time to ride the bike. We have a small scale prototype ecosystem that we need to ride for a while before we start to scale up more. Because again, I'm a practitioner of learning on a small scale. And we're at a scale where we have all the components to the ecosystem. Now we just need to learn what's working, what isn't working, iterate what's not working, and then evolve it to the next. So that'll be our focus in the future. But the core components of what we do, listening to the community, empowering the community to occupy and activate space in ways that are authentic to them. And just being consistent.
Listen, brother, thank you so much for spending this time with me. I have enjoyed talking with you. I'm impressed with your track record and your work. Let's take the last minute to give our personal props to Jamaica. We'd be remiss in not talking about how Jamaica informs how we move. What's your story on that? Your elevated story about Jamaica in your life.
Man, Jamaica is, I'm quite glad I'm Jamaican. Jamaicans are probably some of the most resourceful folks I know, some of the hardest working. I have 2 or 3 jobs them, which is why I'm trying to get down to 1 and just mind my business. But no, Jamaica, and really what I've tried to recreate. I'm a transplant here, so while Northside is my home, it's not my home. And I would say a big part of that has been recreating how I feel when I go back home to Jamaica. The people, the vibes, the food, the energy, the togetherness, the community. Those are pieces that no matter how much time is in between each visit, every time I go back, those components are still there and still very prevalent. So Jamaica being home has really informed how the components that I want to bring to the Northside community and other communities to align itself to those values.
And I think this idea of not defining ourselves as impoverished or as lacking, but rather seeing ourselves as enabled, empowered, and grinding, and grinding with a purpose and with the belief that victory is at hand. It's both inevitable and imminent, and therefore we rise every day. Brother, good talking to you.
As well.
Stay in touch, and whatever we can do to support the mission and the vision, count on us.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
All right, take care. I'm Al McFarlane. Thank you for watching the conversation with Al McFarlane. Thanks to Chris Webley. See you next time.